Hello, my little leap fowl milches, and welcome to the Monday edition of Moohead Radio. I'm your host, a big and furry bovine, on a day that some Browns fans are very upset about, other Browns fans slept through, and other Browns fans are joyous and rejoicing, but that would be the minority. And we're going to talk about J.J. Watt signing with the Arizona Cardinals, and what a better crew could you ask for? We've got Tony the Calf. The same fucking people that we have all the time. So this is a pretty steady thing. And Derek Frisbee, he's going to join us. And of course, everybody knows that J.J. Watt chose the Arizona Cardinals and pulled that out of thin air and surprised a lot of people. And, you know, there's so many ways of analyzing this. You could say, for example, is this a good deal for J.J. Watt? Is this a good idea? Or should the Browns have done more? Or should anyone have done more? Was there a better place for him to go?
$23 million guaranteed. He was not going to see that from any other team.
Right. I mean, so there's a lot of different ways of looking at this, okay? And I want to throw my 2 cents worth in. I think everybody knows that I felt that he would be a good thing for Cleveland to have because we don't have a second pass rusher. But when you look at what the Browns chose to do, which was to stand pat on a 1-year offer in that $15.5 million range, I'm assuming I haven't heard if Buffalo got to a hard number or not. I don't know, what the Green Bay Packers would have offered, but here's how I look at it. It would be nice, okay? On your birthday, if you're dieting, you get a cake, and you get your favorite cake. You have a choice whether you have a big piece of that cake and you gain weight and you blow your diet, you eat no cake and you're really unhappy, or if you take a smaller piece, satisfy yourself, but don't go way over the limit. The Cleveland Browns looked at it and said 2 years isn't in the offing. We're just not going to go there. There's a real good possibility that these are the last 2 years in J.J. Watt's career. You just don't know. The Arizona Cardinals did what they did because of the position that they're in. But I want to say this about J.J. Watt, because people are saying, wow, and then Derek is going to tell you that he made a horrible mistake going to Arizona. What I'm going to tell you is he did the right thing, because it was not ever about winning a Super Bowl. It was $23 million guaranteed dollars in a 2-year deal. That's what it was. Nothing more, nothing less. Now, are the Arizona Cardinals, is their odds any different that they could win a Super Bowl than the Browns? No.
Only if Russell Wilson gets traded to the AFC.
Yeah. Are the Browns as good as the Cardinals, or are the Cardinals as good as the Browns? Yeah. 11-5, 8-8. We played in a weakened division, and the game here, a game there, a play here, a play there. We played a lot of close games. It's not a stretch to say that there are a lot of people who felt the Browns were headed for an 8-8 season. When you're 8-8 and you're out west, you got to figure to yourself, you got to take a big step up. Because if you don't take a big step up, then you're not going to get into the playoffs, let alone anything else. So I look at what the Arizona Cardinals did as something that organizationally they felt they had to do. Their defense was ranked 13th out of the teams in the NFL. Offensively, 6th in yardage, but when you put together the points that they actually scored, not that good. All right. Basically 13th. So you got a quarterback who in his first 2 years had remarkably similar statistics. In 2019, Kyler Murray, 64.5% completion. Last year, 67.2. 3,700 yards, 3,900 yards this last year. 20 touchdowns in 19, 26 in 20, 12 interceptions both years. A passer rating of 87.4 in 2019 and 94.3 in 2020. Right? Good young quarterback, very elusive, great open field speed. However, what they do not have is a prolific running game. The Arizona Cardinals are behind the Cleveland Browns in that regard. They're ahead of us defensively, although they still gave up a fair number of actual yards. It's not that they stopped people cold. They gave up enough points that it ranked right in the middle of the NFL. Their defense, they're not one player away, is what I'm saying. So what I look at is I say your running back, your leading running back, 955 yards. It took him over 260 carries to get there, 4 yards a carry, and not much behind him. And yeah, Kyler Murray will run with the ball, but eventually he'll get stepped on. They feel that they have to do this based on the competitive nature of the West, and they're gambling, which Tony the Calf would love. They're gambling on this guy staying healthy, which hasn't been the case in the last, 80 games that he's played.
Now, in that same vein, I will say that Arizona ranks very high as far as sports medicine is concerned. So he picked a pretty good spot to land.
Sports medicine ain't going to help him if he rips a knee out. I mean, I guess.
But he'll be able to walk when he's 55. That's the
yeah. And I'm not saying that Arizona's a bad place. It's not a bad place. What I'm saying is, if you said to J.J. Watt, all right, let's take the Super Bowl out of it, because nobody can predict who's going to win a Super Bowl. Next year, the favorites are Tampa Bay and Kansas City, and then the Buffalo Bills, and then, But nobody knows how the season's going to fall. Nobody knows how injuries are going to befall a team and ruin their chances. The agent for J.J. Watt and J.J. Watt himself could not possibly ascertain which teams really in the vast middle that we always talk about in the NFL would have the better chance of going to the Super Bowl. The Browns are half a football team. They're not one player away either. Neither are the Cardinals. Neither are most teams. The Green Bay Packers are going to be on their way down when Aaron Rodgers doesn't get up one time after getting hit. Not to mention Ben Roethlisberger, who the Steelers aren't even all that excited about coming back, although they're trying to send out all this great, he's coming back, Yeah,
it's like being told your great aunt's coming over, who always is a little too personal with you. You got to pretend you're happy about that news.
Yeah, I mean, look, Ben Roethlisberger's given a lot for that organization, and I'm not going to badmouth him that way. But again, they're not one player away, and the Ravens are.
I want one last crack at sweeping that piece of shit.
Yeah,
Just
don't we all? Yeah. Now the Ravens, they're not one player away. They're one play away from disaster with their quarterback situation, is what they are, as most teams would be. But for them, it would be especially difficult because they refuse to upgrade their offense. The Buffalo Bills might be the closest to being one player away, but they weren't in the running because they just didn't have the salary cap. So if you said to me, all right, you got the Cleveland Browns and they're offering 1 year with guaranteed money, and the Arizona Cardinals, who are going to give you $23 million guaranteed and a 2-year, $31 million deal. I mean, how could you say he's doing the wrong thing? Because money talks and bullshit walks. Nobody is going to sit there with a crystal ball and say, oh, you just blew the Super Bowl. You can't possibly believe that the teams that were in the running, the Green Bay Packers, the Buffalo Bills, maybe, the Cleveland Browns, and the Arizona Cardinals, that those teams are shoo-ins for the Super Bowl, that there's some great certainty. The Browns have never been there. How long has it been since Kurt Warner? Is that right, Brian?
Yeah.
Right? So it was a long time ago. Packers more recently than that. And the Buffalo Bills have this horrible, horrible thing that's as bad as the Browns not being there, is losing those years in a row and not being anywhere close ever since. So there you have it. I can't imagine how Derek Frisbee is going to tell us that he did the wrong thing when he made as much money as he could and went to a team that was in the vast middle of the NFL. Go, Derek.
All right. Well, so if you look at it from that perspective, the way I'm looking at this, the reason why I say he made a mistake was because I'm going off of the list of criterias that we heard allegedly that came from his camp.
I believe that. I'll go there for free. He's a fucking free agent. You know what that means? He was the number one name being talked about, man. It's money.
Well, but listen, though, I'm saying obviously he wasn't going to go anywhere for free. There was delusional fans who thought he was going to sign for really cheap. The Browns, and I'm not mad necessarily that he didn't come to Cleveland. Would I have wanted him? Yeah, sure. That would have been nice, obviously. But to me, when you look at if he just cares about money, go be a rich loser. Great. Have fun. But here's the problem. The Cardinals are not a team. If he's going to the Cardinals because of money and winning potential, yeah, they finished 8-8. I think they're better than that. But here's the problem. They have a ton of free agents that they're going to lose. And now that they've spent this money on Watt, they're not going to have money to fill in the holes. So what they have right now in Arizona is a bunch of flash. They have a bunch of flashy guys. Buda Baker, now J.J. Watt, Chandler Jones. They have all these guys. Now, Isaiah Simmons, I was a big believer in him. I don't know if they know how to use him. But the problem is if you're going to sign with Arizona and you say money's a big thing and winning potential is a big thing. Now, I also factor in the coaching. I really don't trust Kingsbury. I mean, you can disagree with me on that.
No, I think there's a history that he's a little flaky.
Yeah, I've never been huge on him. And you can remember going back to Baker's Texas Tech days. So there is a history with him. But I think overall, when you look at the future, these next 2 years, if I'm J.J. Watt, I'm thinking, okay, where's a place I can get paid, what I want, and also have a good chance of winning? I think the Cardinals, I mean, what do? You're going to go from 8-8 to 9-7, 10-6? Great, have fun. You're in a division with the Rams, who just come out, and you get Matthew Stafford. They have one of the best defenses in the league. You got the Seahawks, who, we'll see what happens with Russ. I don't think at the end of the day anything will happen, but who knows? They're always a pretty good to solid team. And the 49ers were just in the Super Bowl, and if they didn't get hurt, I mean, their whole defensive line got hurt. If they're healthy, they're going to be legit. I think the Cardinals, at best, are third in their division, if not fourth. So, JJ, if you wanted money, congratulations. You got it. Check. Great job. But if you want success, I disagree.
Well, how do you guarantee success? If you wind up taking
we're guessing. Money, we're guessing, obviously.
Where should he have gone? If he was willing to take less money, where?
If he's willing to take less money, if you're focused on winning, I would go to Buffalo.
And you believe that Buffalo would give him the best chance of getting into the Super Bowl?
I think if you look at Buffalo combined with, because the thing about the Cardinals, what I just talked about with the flash, where you have name guys, Buffalo across the board is solid at every position. I mean, they got guys like Micah Hyde's a guy who a lot of people, if you say Micah Hyde, they're going to go, whatever. He makes crazy plays on a weekly basis, but you never know because he plays for Buffalo. So I think if he wants to win, and the Packers, they're in a rough spot, but you're just in the NFC Championship. and you played solid. I mean, they were in the NFC Championship the year before. Now you're not gonna get the money from Green Bay, and that's what the report you heard. I can't remember the guy's name, but he said they're not even in the running because of the money. But I'm just saying, as far as if he values money more, that's great. But if he values winning more, then I think he made a mistake. That's the point I'm trying to make.
And I guess what I believe is predicated upon looking at a losing organization historically, like the Cleveland Browns, and players who were stuck there and then got to leave and ended up, in some instances, going someplace and faring much better. You're in Texas, you're with the fucking Texans, and they're just fucking up left, right. And it's not like it's the first light of the match. It's like the barn's on fire. And the
first light of the match was already DeAndre Hopkins.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, things have been going bad.
Well, how about Clowney and Tunsil?
I mean, the whole organization has one thing after another, and it affects people. And J.J. Watt was outspoken about the fact that there are many guys on the field who weren't trying. And I believe him, because I've watched the Browns for decades, and a lot of the players weren't trying. They just would lay down and quit and collect their paychecks. And for some people, that's enough. To me, I think he wants to go someplace where it's fresh, the team has a chance to win, has at least enough of a history now that they look like they have players at various positions, and they'll be competitive, because the Texans are not competitive. And he's saying, if these were my last couple of years in the sport, I at least want to go someplace that is competitive. Now you say, well, why didn't he come to Cleveland? Because 1 year and that money wasn't going to cut it. So if you break it down into those two things, find me a competitive team with a young quarterback who's got a nice future, and we got a great wide receiver in DeAndre Hopkins, and we're in the middle of the defense, and we need that extra pass rusher because we already have one on the other side, assuming he comes back from his injury from last year. And it's not a bad place to land if that's what your criteria is. I just don't believe the criteria ever was, well, I want to go to the Super Bowl. Now, I think that Gronkowski, I think that Tom Brady, I think that there comes a point where you just see the end coming, and the whole organization is like when LeBron came to Cleveland. It's like all in.
But Moo, you know what concerns me the most about this move from the Cardinals front office perspective? Obviously, like you said, they're gambling. But here's the problem. You look at the Texans, and what was their problem? It was they couldn't protect Deshaun Watson. The Arizona Cardinals have one of, if not the worst offensive lines in the league. So now you're not going to have the money to go out and sign somebody who could potentially come in and help you. I'm not sure where they're drafting. It is probably somewhat high, but I mean, other than, the first tackle,
I think they're around 13 or 14.
Yeah. So, but other than the first tackle and Penei Sewell, the other guys are kind of a projection. Sewell's the only labeled, and I know we do this every year, but you look at Penei Sewell out of Oregon, he's as far as what everybody's saying, the surest thing. And, that's never for sure, but the Cardinals are not in a position to protect Kyler Murray, which is concerning, especially coming from Houston, and you just saw that happen.
No, I mean, here's what I'll tell you. My belief is, when all's said and done, having that one glorious player, assuming that J.J. Watt can have a glorious season at his age, which is a big question mark, you're not going anywhere until you learn how to draft. The Browns are an incomplete football team, just as the Cardinals are, and one guy isn't going to turn that fortune around. It just isn't going to happen. You have to be able to draft wisely, and I will give you some examples. On the plus side, we had a major problem at left tackle, and Jedrick Wills filled the hole and fit the bill. Okay. Grant Delpit, not plated down. Jordan Elliott. I'm just going, these were our last year picks. I mean, spot part-time player.
I didn't even know he was a fucking thing.
Yeah. Jacob Phillips. They like his speed, but not enough to supplant, Malcolm Smith. Harrison Bryant, who's a serviceable tight end, but they didn't believe that they had anything utterly special there, so they spent a lot of money on Austin Hooper. Nick Harris, who had to play out of position, was their 5th pick in the draft in 2020, and he might be a young, serviceable lineman. Donovan Peoples-Jones was the guy that they got in the 6th, and there's a guy who, we'll talk about the wide receiver situation in just a moment. The year before, Greedy Williams, who is a bust at this point, and until I actually see him on the field making plays, is a total bust. Taki, who is limited.
Did well with what he had, though.
Sheldrick Redwine.
He improved. I think Taki improved towards the end of the season, especially.
But look, if you've dumbed down the position where you only have 2 linebackers on the field, Taki can hit somebody hard, but he can't cover anybody for shit. Let's just be honest about it. He was your 2nd pick, 3rd round in the 2019 draft. But he's played a lot of snaps. So I think we know what we have in him. And it ain't nothing that let's just say that drafted in the 3rd round, he's playing like a 3rd rounder would play. I don't see that it's any different than the guy we had, Schobert. It's a Sheldrick Redwine, who has not really flashed out of Miami. The 5th round pick was Mac Wilson, who's a bust. I think we can all agree that Mac Wilson and the way he's tweeting out
Von Miller, come to
get Von Miller. Like Von Miller's really, he's like, Mac who? The guy's a bust. Then Austin Seibert, which was, a 5th round absolute. If you end up with Cody Parkey, then you fucked up your 5th round pick there. Drew Forbes, that we just can't seem to get on the field because he's hurt.
Well, he opted out this year.
Yeah, that's right. You're right. And Donnie Lewis Jr., who I don't even know, he probably is as good as Freddie Prinze Jr. I mean,
sounds like a country folk singer. What?
Yeah. And you go back the year before that, Denzel Ward, okay, fine, although he's a little brittle, and Baker Mayfield, okay, fine. Austin Corbett, Nick Chubb, glorious. Chad Thomas, Antonio Callaway, Bernard Avery, Damian Ratley, Simeon Thomas. I'm hearing a lot more buzzers than I'm hearing bells. All right. Until you learn how to draft, you're never going to have a complete football team because you can't put together a football team strictly with free agents. We know this. It's never worked that way. It's not going to work that way for the Arizona Cardinals either. You need a combination of things, and luck is one of them. Having an available player that you have insight on that turns out to be, so much more than other teams thought they might be.
Hey, speaking of that, I don't know. This is kind of from a while back, but when we picked up Curtis Weaver off of, do you know who I'm talking about? Curtis Weaver?
No. Who is Curtis Weaver?
So Curtis Weaver was
Charlie Weaver's son from the Hollywood Squares?
No, he was a defensive end. Okay. He was a defensive end drafted out of Miami in the 5th round, I believe. A lot of teams had like a 3rd-ish round, and he ended up dropping. Anyway, he got injured, and I guess there's a rule for players after a certain round. They have to clear waivers first in order for you to put them on IR. Well, anyway, they went through that process as they're supposed to, and the Browns claimed him. Now, I forgot about this, but I was looking into him a little bit more today, and it turns out he was actually graded as one of the most productive defensive ends in that class. And I mean, I'm not saying he's certainly not the answer by any means, but as far as a good, solid depth piece that nobody's talking about, he's a little bit undersized. But if his production in college matches even somewhat with the NFL, it seems like we have a good, third or fourth end to put in for rotation. And he played linebacker too, so you could also try him there.
We haven't had a defensive end besides Myles Garrett for for God knows how long. You got to be able to draft and you've got to be able to have some insight about players. The Browns did what they had to do. They were willing to go 1 year with J.J. Watt, and that was it. And I'm not going to argue with them. What I'm going to say is you now still have $30 million to spend in cap money, and you still have players out there. I mean, so it's not like you can't help yourself, but man, you cannot have the Greedy Williams and Delpits and survive if they all end up being not formidable. And that is what makes teams complete teams. And we're just not there. And there are a whole bunch of teams just like us who are not there. And the Arizona Cardinals, their decision was to pull the trigger. If he gets hurt, that organization is fucked. Like you said, Kyler Murray has no protection. He's going to go down, and the team will be 4-12. Just that quick. And Cliffy will be really a pain in the ass at that point.
He may be fired.
That guy is.
Well, because think about this. Since they got him, they started with the number 1 pick and then 8-8 and whatever they'll be next year. I mean, it's not like he's jumped up crazy in success.
Right.
Well, again, now I'm not hearing anything from Tony the Calf. Tony?
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah. J.J. Watt, it doesn't really surprise me he went to Arizona. I think the only other place he was going to go would have been Buffalo. I don't think Cleveland was realistically a possibility. Not because I'm not saying that the Browns are bad. I'm just saying that, to attract free agents, you need more than 1 year of substantiated winning. And for especially big name free agents.
I totally agree. I mean, that's why I'm saying I think he did the right thing in the sense that he's going to have better footing to rush the quarterback in Arizona. I mean, if it's about him having a rejuvenation and if he can stay healthy, it's not a bad place for him to be at all.
Yeah, and he's a big name. It's like he's not going to, let me go to Cleveland and all of a sudden they suck again. It's like, why the fuck did I pick them? You know what I mean? But, J.J. Watt is what it is. The Browns, they didn't need J.J. Watt. There's other options. They've got plenty of draft picks. Barry's proved he can draft well, with his top picks. So we'll see where it goes from here. But
a 26th pick is not likely to turn things around. You're going to need, and right now, like the little comparison I made about the birthday cake, smaller slices are going to have to do, folks. We're going to have to get a bunch of small slices that we can consume over the course of several days rather than one big piece all at once. We're going to have to draft pieces. And honestly, at 26, what is going to be available to us? And you have to hit on that. To make improvements to this roster, you have draft picks. You've got 2 additional picks than what you had had the previous year, But the Browns, even offensively, if you want to look at it honestly, are slow.
Yep.
Flat out slow. And I mean, no rap against Rashard Higgins, who should be re-signed. And I'm sure that Donovan Peoples-Jones will continue playing for the Browns. But we have slow wide receivers. I mean, Rashard Higgins is a good pattern runner. He understands what he's supposed to do. with Baker, that's wonderful. Odell Beckham is, look, we put the money in. We might as well ride that horse because
Yeah, that complicates my theory because I really think the Browns should trade Odell Beckham for whatever they can get from him. But then again, you'd be creating more holes
coming off an
to
injury.
fill the holes he got. It's like
they ain't gonna get Dick. They ain't gonna get Dick for him coming off an injury
because you can't really go through another season expecting, with OTAs and workouts now in play and a full off season to expect Jarvis Landry to be your number one wide receiver.
What's the max? What do you think the max we'd get for him? Maybe a third.
I could see you could probably get a second round pick for him.
I mean, maybe, but I mean, again, you don't know how he's gonna walk out onto the field after having that kind of procedure. You just don't know. So, but if you want a fast wide receiver, you can go in the second and third round, but you just have no defense on the field. You have to draft defense. That's what it comes down to. And you're going to have to pretty much live with Austin Hooper, with Rashard Higgins, with Donovan Peoples-Jones, and with OBJ. That's what you're going to have to live with. I don't see that changing.
And I know they need a lot of secondary help, but the problem with the secondary availability is most of the guys available are older than 30s. Do you really want somebody who's in their 32, 33 years old who can give you, maybe 1 or 2 years before it falls off the cliff?
Look, I'll tell you something. For me, it's about getting back into the playoffs. It isn't about a Super Bowl. It's about finding your place and saying, okay, we're this good. And maybe you do need a 30-year-old, 31-year-old guy who can be a leader, who's able to go out there and still has some plays left in them, so that your future draft picks can develop and learn. It's about matching what you did and maybe going one step further. That would be raising the bar as much as I dare raise it. What's up, Derek?
Did I don't know if I told you yet or not. Did I tell you about the guy I met at my work? Does that ring a bell at all?
If this is like a relationship story.
No.
You think that's appropriate? No, you didn't. No.
So, I work with horses, right? I told you that.
This really is getting funky now. Go ahead.
Okay. Anyway, so he owns a horse over there where I work, right? Well, it turns out I knew he worked for the Columbus Crew, which is the MLS team here. I didn't know what he did. I've never been told what he did. Turns out he works in their analytics department. Now, the Columbus Crew is owned by Haslam. Obviously, he just bought them this past year. He told me that because I was wearing a Browns hat and we got to talking, and among other things, he said that sometimes their analytics team works hand in hand with the Browns analytics team on certain things, especially draft related. He said that what he heard was don't expect linebackers before third round. So he said that they're going all in on secondary and defensive line. So he said don't expect he was really high on JJ when we talked. He thought they were going to make a real run at him. But he said, and we've heard this before, so this is not new, but this is just kind of backing up what we've been told. Don't expect a linebacker before third round. And that would make sense given last year drafting Phillips third round and the year before with Taki and Mack late rounds.
Yeah. No kidding. Yeah, that's Mr. G. Wilbur, your horsey friend. Well, I mean, I hope that's true. I hope we do concentrate on the defensive line. And on the
he was talking to Gus the Mule.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, how do you think I feel talking to a lawyer?
Shifting gears. There are things that I don't understand. And, I was watching, and explaining to Rox about, who Phyllis George was, right? And Irv Cross, who was also, an analyst on CBS, was part of that whole Brent Musburger, and he was there before Phyllis George and during. He was the first black man to work full-time as a sports analyst on national television in 1975. Now, how in the hell can that be? And you never heard nothing about him. This guy was an absolute pioneer. He was a professional football player too. But I mean,
for the Eagles.
Yep, you remember Brett
Pat Summerall. They were both Eagles.
Yeah, and Brent Musburger and Phyllis George and Jimmy the Greek. Remember all that?
Yeah.
Irv Cross was the first full-time black sports analyst, and it took until 1975. I point this out because for all the talk about, Jackie Robinson was around in 1947, is that right? And, then Larry Doby, and then, the first black manager in the major leagues was Frank Robinson in 1975. It took 1975 on TV to have a black guy as a sports analyst. And at the same time, Phyllis George got a job, which I could never understand what the hell the point was of Phyllis George. But be that as it may, that's how long it basically took for a woman to get to a sports analysis position. But passed away at 81.
Well, therein lies your answer. She was nice to look at, as I remember.
No, she was a Miss America contestant. Actually, Miss Kentucky now, wasn't she? She married the governor of Kentucky, as I recall, John Brown. So, that's the way that goes. But it's amazing how Irv Cross, when I saw the headline that he passed away, it's like, God, it was forever that I thought about him. I didn't realize that he was the first guy. I mean, you hear about the firsts all the time.
Wasn't CBS back then, weren't they doing the AFC games? I think so.
CBS, at the time, I mean, that was the first.
See, that would have been channel 23 for me.
That was the first,
I think
the first live pregame show, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And,
I remember when SNL lampooned the shit out of them.
Well, I remember when Jimmy the Greek got fired, and nothing will ever beat that, Well, you get a big black buck and a big black woman, and they end up having a big black baby. It's like, oh, thank you so much for your genetic knowledge, Jimmy the Greek. Stick to handicapping, you stupid fucker. Yeah, but he was part of that team too. But yeah, I was sorry to see Irv Cross pass away. And the thing was, it's like he went on to other things after his role on, what was it called? The NFL Today. That's what it was. He spent 23 years at CBS. I mean, that's a long time. So he left the network in 1994. He ended up as an athletic director at Idaho State and McAllister College in Minnesota. So there you have it. So a passing of a guy who's a legend that nobody will ever talk about and deserves something more than what he got.
Yeah, he did a lot of Vikings pregame shows back in the day. I remember growing up.
Yeah, it just seems amazing that as prevalent as African Americans are in athletics, how the organizations, the networks, and everything were so slow to respond. Now it's a different story,
Well, and Irv Cross paved the way for guys like O.J. Simpson and
to murder people.
Fuck was the other one?
Eric Dickerson.
Well, but at NBC they hired and they went with Bryant Gumbel, and then they hired his brother,
Greg Gumbel.
Yeah. So, and then this, you want to tell me that either of these players is clean and sober? Now Josh Gordon and Johnny Manziel are going to reunite in the Fan Control Football League, and it's not just wonderful. That's where they both belong. They both belong back on Dr. Drew and fucking dying with a needle in their arm. And I don't give a shit about these people anymore. It's like, it's pathetic. The whole thing is just pathetic. After a while, you just are numb to this whole thing, you know? Well, I got my other chance to play in the NFL and I fucked it up for the 6th time. So I'm going to go to this one and fuck it up over there.
Did you see he said if he was offered an NFL contract, he wouldn't take it? It's like, nobody's going to offer you, dude. You're delusional.
Well, I mean, and it's such a shame because Josh Gordon was inordinately talented.
Oh, yeah.
Can you imagine if the Browns had a Josh Gordon to go with what they have right now? I mean, a clean and sober one. Can you imagine? A big guy with that speed?
I mean, they kind of do. His name is Odell Beckham, but he just can't keep,
No, not big like that. Josh Gordon is just tall. I mean, he's a guy you could throw the ball up in the air to. He would just go up and get it. He's athletic. He was fast. He could get separation. I mean, it was too good to be true. It really was.
He was the poor man's Randy Moss.
Yeah. I mean, and saying that you're reuniting with Johnny Manziel, I mean, that's just really just piddle.
Anyways,
and please don't no renditions of the 70s disco hit, please.
Let's talk some happy Cleveland news. Looks like you got a big budding all-star on that front line for the Cavaliers.
You mean Jared Allen?
Yeah.
Look, I mean, the 76ers game, I mean, it was more about what they're lacking. I mean, I watched the game, and they were 16-2 up to that point at home.
Yeah,
and I understand
the tar out of Luka Doncic and the Mavericks.
Yeah, and I certainly understand that when the Cavaliers come in, they can catch you looking the other way, and players have a tendency to rest and take things for granted that they could play half-assed and beat the Cavaliers. It was a pathetic showing, but for reasons other than just losing the game, it's that if they think that Johann Embiid is going to be able to carry this team by himself, they're fucking crazy. I mean, Embiid is a wonderfully skilled big man. Don't get me wrong. He can shoot the 3 ball, he's shooting it over 40% this year. He's big and strong. He can get his shot down low. But that by itself in today's game, a fast big man can outrun him down the floor. He's always got aches and pains and sprains. And they have this idiot point guard who either refuses to take coaching or has been told abandon and jettison the whole idea of shooting a 3, although he did at the end of the game and it was nothing but net. And you wonder, and his form didn't look that bad, you wonder what the reason is. You just keep driving him down and that he's taking sky hooks. And then the supporting cast, Tobias Harris wasn't there. And that would have been the difference in that game. But we're talking about the NBA playoffs. We're talking about the 4 elite teams. And they were 22-11 going into that Cavalier game. And they didn't show me anything coming off the bench or anything that makes me believe that come ratcheted up time, that team is going to be worth a shit. I just don't see it.
Yeah, the Cavs are in for a long, long rebuild.
Well, the thing is they lost all those games in a row going out west, and now they've won 3 in a row. It's stop and start, stop and start.
And it should be 4 in a row because if they lose to Houston tonight, it's...
Well, the Houston game is Houston's just been tanking. They've been terrible. And is it in Houston or in Cleveland?
It's in Houston.
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't, the Cavaliers on any given night can just lose by 20 and stand there picking their nose. I mean, I think it's great that the team has won 3 in a row. They're very young. They're very inexperienced. Jared Allen did get pushed around by Embiid. Make no mistake. You could see that when Embiid just wanted to get his move around, he was going around Jared Allen and through him. And I'll say this too, that if the 76ers could not win that game with every call they got down the stretch of that game, every time down the floor, they were given free throws. For Christ's sake, they shot twice as many free throws as the Cavaliers, and they were calling really negligible contact fouls against the Cavaliers. They did everything they could do to get them that win, and they still couldn't pull it off. The Cavaliers, for their part, Okoro is having his better days and some worse days. Team is way better off with Jetty Osman never even entering the game, and I've been saying that all year. And don't need him on the floor and the mistakes that he makes. I think Darius Garland got off to a horrible shooting start for the first 3 quarters of that basketball game. That's as bad a game as he's played offensively, but he got it together in the end. He's got a cool head. He's a good young player. Colin Sexton, volume shot, 11 of 27. He did not have one of his better offensive production games, but still, when things mattered, it's like even Dean Wade gave him 12 rebounds and 8 points, the Cavaliers out-hustled them, got to more loose balls, played harder, and made the plays down the stretch when they were least expected to do that. But I think it says more about the Sixers than it does about the Cavaliers. And I think the Cavaliers on any given night, if they shoot the ball relatively well, can beat people. The thing that was amazing is the Cavaliers didn't even shoot the ball very well. And watching Seth Curry going 1 for 11 from the floor. Yeah. That was a rancid performance by the 76ers. But, I'm Cavaliers. You look at all the teams bunched up at 16 and 17 and 15 wins now.
Yeah.
It's up in the air for a lot of people. The Cavaliers don't have enough to be able to sustain enough wins.
The great mediocrity.
I don't know that anybody really is all that excited about any of the teams who are, I saw Stephen A. Smith was gritting from ear to ear that his Knicks were above 500. The league has done everything they can do, for crying out loud, to try to get the Knicks and the Nets into the goddamn playoffs, and to have 2 California teams into the playoffs as well, 2 Los Angeles teams. This is all about market size. It's all about star names and star power. We know all that. The Hawks have fired Lloyd Pierce.
Yep.
Gone. They didn't wait too long to do that either. Basically, he's got Trae Young.
This just in: Atlanta hires Don Nelson from the grave.
Yeah, I don't know what the Knicks did is they just put Tibbs in there, and Stephen A. Smith, you're happy with Tibbs. You're not going to be happy for long, and the players won't either, because everywhere he's been, he has become an antagonist to management and an antagonist to players.
Yeah.
He overplays his guys in minutes, and you take a look at what's happening on the floor. Embiid is playing over 40 minutes a game. It's stupid. It's stupid. And, I don't, I'm looking at what coaches are doing. You've got to look ahead. The Knicks have some nice players. I think Julius Randle's a really nice player.
Yeah.
I think JT Barrett is becoming the player that they thought he would be when he came.
RJ Barrett.
Yeah, I was going to say JT Barrett's not failed, but he's a failed NFL quarterback from OSU.
Sorry. But he's become more of what people expected when he came out of Duke. He's, they got some players on the team and they're playing defense. But the thing is for how long are they going to allow themselves to get pushed around by Tibbs? And Tony, you would be a person who would know more about this than anyone.
Right. Thibodeau is only going to last so long. They might stick around 500. Hell, he was able to get the Timberwolves to 500 and in the playoffs. If you remember, we made the playoffs one year, the fateful Jimmy Butler year, because Thibodeau taught defense.
Like Mike
But-
Fratello, slow the game down and slow it down to a crawl. Use the shot clock, play defense. You're going to win a lot more games that way.
But the problem with that season was he alienated Karl Anthony Towns, who only
That's
had 7
exactly
shots
right.
a game.
And
No,
where did he
granted-
go after Minnesota, where they bounced him because he pissed everybody
He was
off?
just free agent. He was doing color for ESPN or analysis or
I
analysis.
thought he was someplace else that he totally alienated or was it the front office in Minnesota that he alienated?
I know he alienated the front office in Minnesota, but I don't think he had another job post the Wolves. No,
Somebody
yeah.
look up his career.
Released by the Wolves in 2019 and hired by the Knicks in 2020. So
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
he's doing what Tibbs does, and it only lasts so long because today's athlete doesn't like to have a coach who's in perpetual need of antacids. I mean, it becomes overbearing and overburdening. We've seen a lot of coaches like this who are disciplinarians who can get something out of players. But a lot of these young guys are going to realize that, you know, they're playing for points, they're playing for salaries, and that this kind of slow down kind of ball is going to hold their numbers down. Their value is going to diminish, and they're not going to jump when he cracks the whip. That's what has happened to him in Minnesota.
now I will say, if it meant having him back and Karl Anthony Towns shooting 7 times a game to have decent to watch basketball again, I'd take him back in a fucking heartbeat. But
Well, but I mean,
god damn, this
Yeah,
team
well, look,
sucks.
we're all part of the same bullshit in the NBA, which we're all afterthoughts.
Uh,
The Cleveland Cavaliers are an afterthought. There were no headlines. Cavaliers beat Sixers. The league would just rather just sweep it under the rug and forget about it. It was a bad game, and the Sixers didn't try. Yada yada yada.
Well, it was just like last night. The Wolves were, I think, leading the fucking Suns after 3 quarters, and all of a sudden the blitzkrieg just fucking hits. You know,
Yeah.
Devin Booker throws it in from anywhere.
Yeah, you got
God.
talent. You got talent, and you know you got and any team that gets in with a near 500 record is just going to get bounced that quick because they're not going to get a call in the playoffs. Let's be honest.
Right.
I mean, this has been repeated so many times. But I wouldn't be jumping for joy if I'm a Knicks fan because you don't have the kind of team that's going to go deep anywhere. And you're going to go offense first. When they start calling fouls on you in the playoffs, then it's not going to make any damn bit of difference. And they'll allow the other team to get real physical. And if you squeak by and get into the playoffs and you end up having to play Giannis, then if you breathe the air that he's standing near, he's going to go to the free throw line. How many times did Embiid go to the free throw line? Was it like 20 fucking times against the Cavaliers? It was crazy. I mean, you just can't, you know, and Jared Allen is as good a vertical guarder as I've seen with the Cavaliers. I mean, he doesn't lean into players. He just uses the arm, the wingspan, and Embiid would just dive into him, and they would just say, "Oh, you didn't stay vertical. You're not going to get the call." It's disappointing. So,
Right.
I'm hoping the Cavaliers look good against Houston. It would be nice to have a 4-game winning streak, but I'm not delusional. I look at what they are on the court: 2 undersized guards. And they're starting Dean Wade now. I wish they get rid of Jetty Osman, who's horrible. And I'm thrilled that Jared Allen actually passes out of the middle. But we still need people who can make threes on a more consistent basis. That would be nice. And it looked like Dylan Windler came back to earth. So,
What's the update on Kevin Love?
Kevin Love just experienced soreness when he was practicing, when he went on a full practice and back-to-back practices. And that muscle is just not responding. And again, to me, the last 2 years, Kevin Love has looked like he's held together by paper clips, honest to God. I mean, his back is terrible. Anybody who has a bad back, I got a bad back. And if you got a bad back, you see me playing tennis. it was really funny. The other day I was playing, and my serve, I'm walking back to the baseline to get my serve ready, and I realized I'm walking like fucking Andre Agassi did when he was at the end of his career. I mean, backs kill you. You can't play, and you can't twist, and you can't bend, and all the back spasms that Caleb was having. It's only a matter of time until you compensate and have other kinds of leg injuries and things of that nature. And he's trying to play it at an elite level. It would be wonderful to have him, but it's what it reminds me of. It's like the Indians' Lonnie Chisenhall, a calf injury that he never came back from. And who knows? Soft tissue injuries, and if you're moving in a certain way where it's putting pressure on your calf muscle, it could just tear again. So I don't count on anything. I don't count on anything from that direction. And anyway, you want to be able to push the ball up the court. And I don't know how Kevin Love would be wonderful to have a nice 3-point guy and a guy who really passes the ball well, and a secondary rebounder who knows positioning, not verticality. That's all wonderful stuff. But you look at it from another perspective, and it's like, God, as a 4, how is he going to make it up and down the court to guard another 4?
Right.
That's tough. So, that's not going to be an easy thing.
Nate McMillan is the new coach of the Hawks, by the way.
Oh yeah, I mean the interim thing continues, and they were hoping he would take the job, and that way they can go off and they can hire somebody else, and so now they have an African American replacement for an African American coach, then hire a white guy next year. We know how that works. We've seen it too many times before. Another thing was Albany College's men's basketball coach. 20 years to coach that team, and he was let go. Will Brown is his name, and he did have some success, but in the last 3 years, they had losing seasons, and he's 49 years old, and that was it. And he's had, over the 7-year span of 2011 to 2018, he had an 153-83 record, but what made him special is when he took over as the coach of the University of Albany, they were not a Division I program. He had to literally, take them from starting out as a Division I member in 1999, and he really did well in building it into a real solid mid-major program. So there's no thanks in being coach. And I don't know what they wanted Lloyd Pierce to do. What I know about the Hawks is that they lost to the Cavaliers, and Trae Young was just flipping them up from everywhere. The fourth quarter became the Cavaliers and their inability to close out games against Trae Young because nobody else was seeing the ball. They've lost 11 out of 14 games in Atlanta. They started out the season, I think they said 10-7. And they've lost 11 of their last 14 games. So they fire the coach. But I looked at the team and I'm saying, boy, these guys, I don't, and if it weren't for Trae Young getting all the calls because he's at least a named player, I don't think they'd have as many wins as they have.
Yeah, they've had some major injuries too. They've had Gallinari was out for a while, and Bogdanovich is still out,
but these guys are guys in their 30s who, quite honestly, have seen better days.
Yeah,
I don't see this as being a roster full of promising young up and comers.
Right.
It's with the Cavaliers, you could at least make the excuse, well, they're so young. I don't know what to say about the Hawks. The Hawks have been a non-starter as far as conversationally in the NBA for God knows how long. When was the last time? I mean, Budenholzer losing, consistently when he'd have a great record during the year and then tank in the playoffs.
Oh yeah, all those years with like Jeff Teague and Al Horford and
Right. I mean,
Kyle Korver.
and Schroeder, and they. But at least then they had a commodity that was winning. Now I don't see that. I see them worse off as the Cavaliers because they hit on Trae Young, which is wonderful, but he's undersized and can't play a lick of defense. He's not going to help you on that end of the floor.
Yeah.
And he's starting to press. And when he starts to press, he shoots far too often and shots that are designed more for him to get to the free throw line than it is to go in the basket.
Yeah, he needs more help. I mean, Capella's a nice piece in the front court, but the rest of it's just ugh.
Yeah, and that's true of so many NBA teams. Well, at any rate, I hope everybody understands. I got to get going here, but don't be crying in your beer over J.J. Watt. The whole thing, and what I said is that the Browns need to make a move, and if they wanted to make a bold move, going for J.J. Watt would be a bold move. But this doesn't mean that we can't still make bold moves. We've got
trading up in the draft.
$1 and we've got a draft. We've got to click on both fronts. We've got to get useful pieces. And if so, what I think useful pieces will do will solidify this team as a playoff team. But beyond that, not for me to say, not for anyone to say.
Yeah.
So everybody.
Well, I have this to say. Don't be a trap master.
Yeah,
and see you in the replay, Key.
Yeah, I was going to say, where's Key?
She's spending some quality family time. So
good for her. Good for her.
Yeah.
All right, then, everybody, thanks a lot for tuning into this edition of Moohead Radio. Thanks for your opinions, Derek. Always appreciated. And we'll see everybody again come Friday and see if the Browns are moving in a direction of another free agent that they can land. Until Friday, hasta la vista, Pastor Heads. Good night.